Okay, today we're working on a new kind of equation. Now we've got equations that have variables on each side. It can be kind of intimidating, but as we saw in our end of the lesson question, they are kind of similar to solving two-step equations. Now that we know that, we can be a little bit more confident and understand that this is not going to be too difficult. All right? So, what is the trick? What is the key to solving equations with variables on each side? All right? Well, we're going to rewrite the equation with the variables on one side of the equal sign. I need you guys to read that together with me. After 2, 1, 2. Rewrite the equation with the variables on one side of the equal sign. All right? So, once again, the whole goal of solving an equation is to figure out what the variable is. What does that letter stand for? In order to do that, we have to isolate it. We have to get it by itself. When we have variables on both sides of the equation, we have to take them away from one side and add them to the other. We've got to combine those terms on one side of the equation. So let's quickly look at a few examples. The first example in your book is 8 plus 4d equals 5d. We are trying to take the variables, and instead of having them on both sides, we want them on one side. So this one is fairly straightforward. If I subtract 4d from the left side, adding 4d and subtracting 4d creates what we call a zero pair. All right? And so we can cancel those out. Whatever I do on the left side, I have to do on the right side. Subtract 4d. I'm left with 8 equals 1d, or as we've mentioned earlier, multiplying anything by 1 does not change its value. So really, we have d equals 8. So that is our answer to this one. We can double check this by taking 8 and putting it back up into the original equation. Okay? So if I check the left side of the equation, I know that 4 times 8 is 32. 32 plus 8 does in fact equal 40. If I check the left side, I need 5 times 8, and that equals 40 as well. So we have figured out that our two sides are equal, therefore we're good to go. All right, that was the first example. The next example is very similar. We have 7x plus 4 equals 9x. Who can tell me what's the first step that we're going to do? And then I want you to explain why. Devin, what are we going to do first?
Subtract 7 from both sides.
We're going to subtract just 7? Very good. We're going to subtract 7x. We're going to subtract that whole term. And why are we doing that, Devin?
Because you have to get the variable on one side.
Very good. Devin said we're trying to get the variables all on one side, and that's true. So we're going to subtract 7x. Whatever I do on the left side, I do on the right side. So the positive 7x and subtracting 7x is kind of like a zero pair once again. It leaves me with 4, and that should equal 9x minus 7x. Think of if you have 9 apples and you subtract 7 apples, you have 2 apples. If I have 9 x's and I subtract 7 x's, I'm left with 2 x's. All right, so we're not quite done, but we're left with a very simple one-step equation. To get the x by itself, what do I have to do, Jamie? Divide. Very good. Why did you choose division, Jamie? Right. Right. We're trying to get the x by itself, and we know that that is multiplication, correct? So the opposite is division. Divide by 2. Divide by 2 on the other side. I'm left with x equals 2. Once again, as we always do, we're going to double check this answer. I'm going to take this 2 and I'm going to put it in both sides now. I'm going to put it there and I'm going to put it there. So I know that x, if I replace x with 2, 9 times 2 is 18. On this other side, 7 times 2 is 14 plus 4 also equals 18. Both sides equal 18. So we are good to go. So that is example 1 in your book. And an extra example, We're going to do a couple more, and then we're going to let you get started. Okay. Example 2 in your book says 6n minus 1 equals 4n minus 5. Now, can someone tell me how is example 2 different than example 1? Why would they have us work on example 1 and then give us example 2? What's the point? Tell your neighbor how example 1 is different than example 2. Go ahead. Okay, who has an opinion? Who has an answer? How is this example different than the first one? Bianca. All right, so Bianca said in the first problem, one side of the equation only had one term. Now in this equation, there's two terms on both sides of the equation. So that's true. I also see a bunch of negative signs too, right? A bunch of subtraction. And that's where we get tripped up a lot, all right? So you've got an option here. I'm not saying that you have to do it, but if you struggle with negative signs, if you can get rid of the 6n and realize that it stays negative 1, that's fine. If not, I recommend that you rewrite this 6n plus negative 1 equals 4n plus negative 5, okay? And then we start solving from there. So I need to get the ends on other sides, all right? So if I am subtracting 4n from the right side, I need to subtract 4n from the left side. So that cancels out. The 4n and the negative 4n is like a zero pair. 6n minus 4n leaves me with 2n, all right? 2n plus a negative 1 equals negative 5. So this is where it's handy. It's a good practice to have rewritten that. It helps us to make sure we keep that in negative 5. Lots of people will let that negative sign disappear. All right, now what do we have to do? We have a negative 1. All right, how do we get rid of that negative 1? So you can subtract the negative 1, which is kind of the same as adding 1. All right? And so we have to do that on both sides. Subtract the negative 1 or add 1. And that leaves us with 2n on this side. And what does it leave us with on this side? If I have negative 5 and I add 1 to it, what do I end up with? Anybody? Okay. Negative 4. Very good. So I have negative 4. And now I have a very simple process of dividing by 2 on each side, and n equals negative 2. Once again, don't forget to double check those answers. If I put negative 2 back on each side, I think I get negative 13 and negative 13, okay? So we know we did it right. All right, one more example, and then I'll let you get going on the practice problems, or the got it's. Here we have one. It says 3x minus 2 equals 8x plus 13. Go ahead and try that really quick in the margin of your textbook. 3x minus 2 equals 8x plus 13. Who wants to tell me the first step? Who would like to tell me the first step? Antoinette, what do you think the first step is? Subtract what? All right, we can try that. All right, so everybody get started at least with subtracting 3x from both sides. So if I have a positive 3x and I subtract the 3x, That cancels each other out, right? Like a zero pair. Now, what does that leave me on the left side of the equation? You got to make sure that you understand that it leaves you a negative 2. If I have the 8x and I subtract 3x, how much do I have left? 5x. Very good. 5x plus 13. Now what? Who would like to give me the next step? Micaiah. Okay, very good. We see addition here. This is now a two-step equation. We have multiplication here, and we have addition there. So we need to choose which one to do first. And we've taught you to take care of the addition or subtraction first. So they're adding 13, so I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides. Another zero pair cancels out. Negative 2, I'm already negative 2, and then I'm going to go more negative. What am I going to end up with, Trey? Negative 15. Excellent job. So I've got negative 15, and that's going to equal 5x. Now we're nearly done. What's the next step? Donovan. Very good. We noticed that this is multiplication, so we're going to do the opposite operation or the inverse operation. Divide by 5. Divide by 5. X equals what? Negative 3. Okay? And make sure that we always check the answers. If we put negative 3 back into this side of the equation, I've got 3 times negative 3, which is what? Negative 9, right? Minus 2 is negative 11, is that right? On this side, if I take this negative 3 over here, I've got negative 3 times 8, which would be negative 24, plus 13, which does equal negative 11. Okay? Excellent job. I want you guys to try the got it's at the bottom of the page. There should be 2 of them. Try both got it A and got it B.